There exists no true wealth in gold, nor in bonds, nor in the jewels that glitter in vaults beneath the earth, if a man's soul lies dormant and his heart beats with no greater rhythm than the echo of coin against coin. Let the world speak of riches and investments and the monuments of enterprise, but know this: wealth without purpose is poverty in disguise. Examine the lives of those who have amassed fortunes beyond imagination. Howard Hughes, a name once synonymous with power and ingenuity, possessed an empire stretching across aviation, cinema, and engineering. Yet his last years were spent in isolation, haunted by fears, surrounded not by friends, but by shadows of paranoia. His bank account was full, but his spirit bankrupt. True wealth eluded him, not because he lacked millions, but because he lacked meaning. Contrast this with the journey of Viktor Frankl, a man who survived the concentration camps of Nazi Germany. He lost everything: his family, his home, his freedom, but he never surrendered his sense of purpose. In his suffering, he found meaning. In his trials, he uncovered the spark that led him to write Man's Search for Meaning, a testament to the idea that purpose, not comfort, is what sustains the human soul. He died not as a billionaire, but as a man of profound richness. Now let us inquire into the nature of wealth. What is it but a tool? Like a chisel in the hands of the sculptor, it has no value unless guided by vision. And what is vision if not purpose refined into action? The ancients understood this. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, governed not for self-glory, but to fulfill his duty to Rome and the universe. He wrote in his meditations, "A man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambition." Money alone cannot define ambition, only the soul can. In our modern world, we are bombarded with symbols of affluence: luxury cars, penthouse suites, yachts that glide across oceans. But the wise ask, what is the cost of such things if they extract the toll of your integrity, your relationships, your inner peace? The scriptures speak of a man who built larger barns to store his surplus, yet his soul was required of him that very night. The parable teaches, store not your treasure where moth and rust destroy, but in acts that resonate beyond the temporal. Examine also the life of Oprah Winfrey. Raised in poverty, she rose through sheer will, intelligence, and grace. But her true wealth is not counted in net worth, impressive as it may be. It is measured in lives touched, hearts healed, and minds awakened. Her purpose, to enlighten, to uplift, to inspire, has created an empire of true value. That is wealth anchored in purpose. Purpose gives context to suffering and direction to prosperity. Without it, riches become chains rather than wings. The man who knows his purpose and earns money to serve it is freer than the king who sits on a throne of gold with no mission but conquest. To discover your purpose, one must listen not to the noise of the marketplace, but to the whisper within. Ask yourself, what work would I do even if no one paid me? What injustice ignites a fire in my soul? What brings me peace not only in success but in effort? This self-inquiry must be disciplined. Journal your thoughts each day. Reflect upon what brings you alive. Read the words of the wise, Emerson, who declared that the only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be. Thoreau, who abandoned wealth to live deliberately, to suck out all the marrow of life. These men lived simply yet richly. Purpose is not a destination, but a manner of travel. You may begin with modest means, but if your labor is tied to your soul, you are already wealthy. Think of Muhammad Yunus, who launched the Grameen Bank to provide microloans to the poorest of the poor. He did not seek wealth, yet wealth came to him because he met a need, touched lives, and stood for something greater than himself. So then, let no man envy the rich until he has asked what cost their riches demanded. Let no woman idolize the powerful until she has seen how they wield that power. And let every soul remember, the richest life is the one spent in service to a purpose that calls you beyond the self. Build your empire not with stone and steel, but with truth and transformation. Let your labor reflect your love. Let your earnings become energy to expand your mission. And when at last your days draw short and your breath becomes precious, you will know that you did not merely accumulate, you contributed. And that alone is true wealth. It cannot be taxed, stolen, or spent. It is measured not in ledgers, but in legacies. It outlives the body and travels with the soul. Seek it with the diligence of a miner hunting gold, and when you find it, protect it with the faith of a saint and the fire of a warrior. Money is not the root of all evil, nor is it the fountainhead of all joy. It is a magnifier, an amplifier of that which already resides within a man's soul. When it is guided by intention, when it is yoked to a purpose greater than the self, financial success becomes a vehicle for personal fulfillment, not a detour from it. But woe unto the man who seeks riches without understanding their role, for he will find himself surrounded by wealth and still starving for meaning. Let us look to the life of Andrew Carnegie. Born in poverty in a Scottish weaver's cottage, he emigrated to America and rose through toil and strategy to become one of the wealthiest men in the world. But Carnegie understood something many forget, that wealth not used for the elevation of mankind is a wasted gift. In his gospel of wealth, he proclaimed that the rich are merely stewards of fortune, duty-bound to return it to society in ways that uplift them. He built libraries, endowed institutions, and left a legacy not of opulence, but of opportunity. His financial success was not the end. It was the engine of a deeper mission. Personal fulfillment, you see, springs not from the luxury a man wraps himself in, but from the lives he touches, the changes he effects, and the vision he realizes through his wealth. Consider the example of J.K. Rowling. After rising from single motherhood and welfare to become one of the world's richest authors, she gave millions to charity, even dropping off the Forbes billionaire list due to her generosity. Why? Because her fulfillment came not in hoarding wealth, but in using it to heal, to support, to align her outer success with her inner values. Philosophers have long debated the nature of eudaimonia, Aristotle's term for the highest human good, often translated as flourishing. He argued that true happiness lies not in fleeting pleasure, but in a life well lived, according to reason and virtue. Financial success contributes to this flourishing only when it is the servant of virtue, never its master. Money can buy leisure, education, and time, all of which are fertile grounds where purpose may be cultivated, but it cannot plant the seed of fulfillment in a barren soul. In the modern world, we are tempted to separate commerce from conscience, profit from purpose, but the greatest creators do not make that division. Elon Musk, for all his controversies, envisions his companies not as mere profit machines, but as catalysts for civilization. SpaceX to make humanity multiplanetary, Tesla to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. Whether one agrees with his methods or not, there is no denying that his financial success is tied to a mission that transcends the self. The question becomes then, how do we align our pursuit of money with the pursuit of fulfillment? Begin by asking yourself not just what can I earn, but what can I build? What legacy can I leave? Fulfillment begins when money becomes not the goal, but the instrument, when dollars become bricks in the cathedral of your purpose. Set clear intentions, design your life around contribution. Follow the example of Jane Addams, the founder of Hull House, who, though not wealthy in coin, was wealthy in impact. Her life was a testament to what can be built when one's labors serve others. Read deeply. Let the wisdom of books be your mentors. In The Alchemist, Paulo Coelho reminds us that when you pursue your personal legend, the universe conspires to assist you. And financial success, when harmonized with that legend, brings joy rather than guilt, peace rather than restlessness. Read The Prophet by Khalil Gibran and understand that work is love made visible. Financial reward, when tied to labor born of love, is not a corruption. It is a consecration. Develop strategies rooted in integrity. Budget not only for expenses, but for generosity. Build businesses not only to scale profits, but to solve problems. Invest not only in stocks, but in the dreams of those around you. Mentor the young, employ the underserved, fund the impossible. Fulfillment does not happen by chance. It is constructed deliberately from every act of alignment between who you are and what you do. And let us not forget the ultimate truth. Money is temporal, but meaning is eternal. Consider the words of Viktor Frankl again. He wrote that happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue as the unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself. Financial success, when married to such dedication, produces a wealth that no market crash can destroy. In the end, it is not the figures on your balance sheet, but the story your life tells that determines your fulfillment. Let your wealth be a sentence in that story, not the whole tale. Let it serve the music of your mission, the rhythm of your reason for being. Build fortunes if you must, but build them on foundations of soul. Let each dollar earned be a testament to your truth. Let every financial gain be not a trophy, but a tool. And when you look in the mirror, may you see not just a rich man or woman, but a fulfilled human being, aglow with the light of purpose, well pursued. To ask whether one can pursue profit and remain ethically grounded is to inquire whether the eagle may soar while keeping its eyes fixed upon the earth. It is not only possible, it is necessary. The soul of enterprise and the soul of integrity were never meant to be enemies. When rightly directed, they are twin forces that elevate the individual and enrich the world. Let us begin with the truth that profit is not a sin. Profit, when earned honorably, is the fruit of service rendered, of value delivered, of needs met and problems solved. The great fallacy of our time is the belief that to grow wealthy, one must betray his conscience, that to rise in industry, one must fall in character. But this belief is a lie, born of those who seek shortcuts instead of strength, manipulation instead of mastery. Look to the example of George Washington Carver. Though he never pursued riches, the innovations he created in agriculture, using the humble peanut to uplift southern farming, transformed the economy of a region. He was offered wealth, patents, and prestige, but chose instead a life of ethical simplicity and enduring service. It is not the style of clothes one wears, he said, nor the kind of automobile one drives, nor the amount of money he has in the bank that counts. These mean nothing. It is simply service that measures success. In modern times, consider the legacy of Patagonia's founder, Yvon Chouinard. He built a company that proved capitalism need not come at the expense of the earth. He placed environmental stewardship above relentless profit, insisting that business could be a force for good. Eventually, he gave away ownership of the company to a trust that ensures its profits are used to fight climate change. He earned billions, yes, but he remained anchored in value. That is profit with principle. That is the kind of story we must tell. History is replete with figures who stood at the intersection of ambition and ethics and chose both. Florence Nightingale, though not a capitalist, engineered systems of care that saved governments vast sums and set the foundation for modern nursing. Her model brought both humanitarian value and economic efficiency. What mattered was her unwavering moral compass. She knew what she stood for and refused to betray it. And herein lies the secret. Ethical grounding is not an obstacle to profit, but the foundation of sustainable profit. Business is built on trust. A merchant who cheats his customer may profit once, but the loss of integrity is a debt that compounds. Integrity is compound interest for the soul. It creates relationships, reputation, and resilience. How, then, can one maintain ethics while pursuing profit? The first key is clarity of values. Before launching a venture, forging a partnership, or investing a dollar, ask, what do I believe? What lines will I never cross? Just as a ship needs a rudder to stay its course, a life in commerce needs principles that do not sway with the wind. Write them down, speak them aloud. Let your conscience be as visible in your ledger as it is in your heart. Second, surround yourself with those who honor truth. One man may be tempted, but a team of principled individuals holds one another accountable. When Warren Buffett said he looks for three qualities in people, integrity, intelligence, and energy, he warned that if you don't have the first, the other two will kill you. Build your enterprise on the character of people, not just their competence. Third, design your business to benefit more than yourself. John Mackey of Whole Foods called it conscious capitalism. Stakeholder value, not just shareholder value, becomes the goal. Treat employees as partners, customers as collaborators, communities as allies. Profit becomes a byproduct of purpose, not a contradiction to it. Fourth, remember the mirror test. Every great leader, from Abraham Lincoln to Nelson Mandela, was guided not just by public opinion, but by private reflection. Ask yourself nightly, did I honor my ethics today? Did I trade my truth for temporary gain? The mirror will not lie to you. It is the most honest boardroom you will ever enter. Do not be swayed by the temporary victories of the unethical. For every fraudster who builds a fortune, there is a reckoning. The world remembers Bernie Madoff not for his billions, but for his betrayal. Yet the world remembers Mahatma Gandhi, who owned little but changed nations, for his unwavering truth. Character endures where cunning decays. And let us not forget literature, for it has always served as a moral compass for civilization. In Les Miserables, Victor Hugo gives us Jean Valjean, who rises from criminal to industrialist, guided by conscience and driven by redemption. His transformation is not through wealth alone, but through the realization that the only enduring profit is that which uplifts others. Likewise, Charles Dickens condemned those who hoarded wealth without humanity. Think of Ebenezer Scrooge before his redemption, rich in coins but bankrupt in compassion. In your own life, let every business decision be a declaration of your values. Let your contracts be clean, your promises be firm, your motives be examined. Let your products serve, your profits build, and your progress inspire. Profit earned with honor is a badge, not a burden. It is the outward manifestation of inward alignment, and in the final reckoning, when empires crumble and currencies fade, only the record of your integrity will remain. That and the lives you've touched. Yes, my friend, it is not only possible to pursue profit and remain ethically grounded, it is the only way to create wealth that lasts beyond the grave. There are those who claim that money is a distraction from destiny, that the pursuit of wealth corrupts the soul and clouds the voice of one's higher calling. But I tell you this, money rightly understood is not a hindrance but a helper. It is not the enemy of purpose, but its potential ally. Money is a servant, never a master, and when disciplined by a mind focused on truth, it becomes an instrument that can help unveil the true calling buried deep within the human heart. A man without resources may discover his calling, yes, but how much more powerful is the man who, having found it, can fund its pursuit? How much wider can he cast his influence? How much deeper can he dig his well of impact when he possesses the means to act? To deny money's role in this process is to deny the chisel that carves the marble, the brush that brings color to the canvas, the engine that powers the voyage. Let us turn to history and consider the life of Frederick Douglass. Born into slavery, forbidden to earn money or read books, he escaped bondage and rose to become one of the greatest orators of his age. When he began lecturing across America and Europe, it was not only his words, but the money he earned from his autobiography and his lectures that funded the publication of his abolitionist newspaper, the North Star. His financial earnings were not an end, they were the fuel that drove his mission. He did not serve money, he employed it to serve liberty and truth. Or reflect on the life of Jane Goodall. Her passion for chimpanzees began with observation, yes, but it was funding, both institutional and philanthropic, that allowed her to turn observations into lifelong research, into books, into advocacy. Her calling was not made possible by money. but it was amplified by it. Had she remained a dreamer in obscurity, the world might never have heard the call of the wild through her voice. Money plays many roles in discovering one's calling. At first, it can buy space, space to reflect, to travel, to read, to rest. For many, the tyranny of survival suffocates their higher yearnings. The laborer who works 16 hours to feed his family has little time to ponder metaphysics. Money, in modest measure, creates the breathing room required for introspection. It buys time, and time is the womb in which purpose is born. Second, money provides exposure. A man cannot know what he loves until he encounters it. A woman cannot follow her passion until she sees its form in the world. Books cost money. Courses cost money. Experiences, mentors, travel, all require investment. The young soul with a fire for justice may not find her path in the courtroom until someone funds her education. The artist may never touch a brush without a benefactor. Money brings the unknown within reach and thus allows calling to speak its name. Third, money permits experimentation. You cannot find your calling by contemplation alone. You must try, fail, recalibrate, and try again. Thomas Edison, in pursuit of the electric light, tested thousands of filaments before success. His calling was invention, but it was made possible by funding, by the support of financiers who believed in his vision. Money gave him the laboratory, the materials, the time to discover what was already pulsing in his spirit. Fourth, money empowers expression. What good is a calling locked inside the soul? It must be spoken, written, built, shared. Think of Maya Angelou, whose poetry reached millions. Her voice, bold, defiant, healing, was spread by publishers, tours, and media. These things required capital. Her words were her gift. But money was the bridge that carried them to the world. Money does not give birth to calling, but once calling is found, it allows it to grow, to flourish, to echo through time. Even the saints and sages, though they often eschewed wealth, were supported by it. Siddhartha Gautama left a palace to seek enlightenment, but he was sustained along the way by those who gave him food. Jesus of Nazareth was followed by women of means who funded his ministry. Francis of Assisi renounced riches, but the church he built eventually relied upon wealth to spread its message. The interplay is unavoidable. One may choose poverty, yes, but one must never ignore the role of money in enabling a message to travel. The danger lies not in money itself, but in the forgetting of why it is sought. A man who earns for status has already lost his way. A woman who saves to dominate others will never hear her higher self. But the one who seeks money with the full intent of serving a mission, he has found a worthy companion. She has found a tool to sharpen her vision. Now, how do you harness this principle? Begin by shifting your relationship with money. No longer see it as the goal, see it as the vehicle. Ask yourself not, how can I become rich, but what must I do to be free enough to listen to my soul? Budget time for stillness. Use money to fund sabbaticals, retreats, mentors, and moments of solitude. Read widely. Travel, not to escape life, but to discover the threads of your identity, stretched across cultures and ideas. Create a purpose account, a fund not for emergencies or vacations, but for the pursuit of calling. Use it to explore the things that make your spirit sing. Invest in skill, in craft, in courage. Let every dollar become a step on the path toward the mountain of meaning. And remember, the world will reward you most not for following money, but for following your calling with such excellence that others gladly pay to witness it. When you give the world your soul, dressed in the discipline of skill and the garment of purpose, money will chase you like a faithful hound. Money is not your purpose, but it is a compass needle that often points to your possibilities. Use it wisely, and it will illuminate the path to your destiny. The man who believes that wealth is inherently evil has not studied the history of those who through riches have lifted the burdens of millions. He has not looked deep into the lives of those who with full pockets and fuller hearts have reshaped society. Wealth is not the enemy of goodness. It is the power that can project goodness into reality, the amplifier of values, the carrier of vision, and the builder of a better world. The question is not whether wealth can be used for good, but whether the man who possesses it has the character to wield it rightly. Let us begin with a towering figure, John D. Rockefeller. He was once the richest man in the world, the oil baron whose fortune dwarfed that of emperors. Yet it was not his accumulation of money alone that defined his legacy. It was what he did with it. He founded the Rockefeller Foundation, which funded the eradication of hookworm in the American South, underwrote research that led to the yellow fever vaccine, and advanced education around the world. His money, accumulated through the iron machinery of industry, became the engine of global philanthropy. He once said, "The poorest man I know is the man who has nothing but money." He understood wealth, when hoarded, corrupts. When shared, it transforms. Consider modern times. Melinda French Gates has become one of the foremost leaders of philanthropic work on earth. Through the Gates Foundation, billions have been funneled into healthcare, sanitation, and education. Whole regions have been lifted from the grip of disease. Technologies have been deployed to the poorest corners of the globe, all because one woman and one man decided that their wealth would not be a monument to their ego, but a tool for redemption. And the impact of that decision has echoed louder than any stock ticker or Forbes ranking. The poet Rumi once said, "Don't you know yet it is your light that lights the world?" But what if your light is funded? What if your inner flame, nurtured by wealth, can become a torch for others? Then, my friend, you are no longer merely rich. You are a force for good. Wealth allows you to institutionalize your values. It can found schools, feed villages, launch missions to clean oceans, or send girls to classrooms. With money, you do not simply think noble thoughts, you enact them. You give your compassion the legs to run, your imagination the wings to fly. Look at Muhammad Yunus, who created the Grameen Bank and pioneered microfinance. A modest financial model became a revolution for the world's poorest entrepreneurs, empowering women, changing lives, and winning a Nobel Peace Prize. That is the power of wealth with a conscience. Yet wealth does not need to be billions to do good. One does not require a foundation to change a life. Consider the small business owner who hires from the local shelter, the restaurant that feeds the hungry after hours, the teacher who uses her bonus to buy books for students who cannot afford them. These are not random acts. They are strategic goodness funded by earnings. Wealth is not defined by volume, but by impact. Now, how does one ensure that wealth becomes a force for good? The first principle is intention. Before you acquire, ask, why? Why do I want this wealth? What will I do with it? If the answer is merely comfort, status, or power, you may gain riches but lose yourself. If the answer is empowerment, service, and legacy, then your wealth will serve a divine purpose. The second principle is structure. Build your financial life in ways that make generosity inevitable. Create giving accounts, endow scholarships, fund local initiatives. Make philanthropy part of your business model. Social entrepreneurship is not a fad, it is the future. Blake Mycoskie, founder of Tom's Shoes, built a company on the idea that for every pair sold, one would be given away. That single idea clothed millions of children. That is what wealth with direction can do. The third principle is proximity. Do not give from a distance. Walk into the communities you wish to serve. Understand them. Learn their needs. Listen to their dreams. Wealth becomes dangerous when it becomes disconnected. But when wealth sits in the village square, when it hears the cry of the mother, the song of the child, the struggle of the laborer, it finds its purpose. Fourth, align your giving with your gifts. If you are a teacher, educate. If you are a builder, construct. If you are a speaker, uplift. Wealth does not change your calling, it supports it. As Tolstoy wrote in The Kingdom of God is Within You, everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. Start with what you know. Pour your money into the soil you were meant to till. And finally, do not wait. Too many plan to give someday, when they've earned enough, when they've retired, when life slows down. But life does not slow down. The world does not pause in its suffering. Begin now. Begin small, but begin. Your goodness must not depend on surplus. It must flow from principle. In the Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky warns us that the man who lies to himself and listens to his own lie comes to such a pass that he cannot distinguish the truth within him. The wealthy who believe they are powerless, who think that charity is weakness or generosity is naivete, are lying to themselves. The truth is this: wealth is power, and with that power comes the moral imperative to uplift. Yes, wealth can be a force for good in the world, but only in the hands of those who choose the high road, who reject indifference and embrace stewardship, who see their fortune not as a finish line, but as a starting point for service. Let your fortune build. This question strikes at the heart of our modern confusion. Can abundance in the bank account create abundance in the soul? Can a padded wallet cushion the ache of purposelessness? Can a mansion quiet the restless yearning of the spirit? The world, my friend, is filled with men who are rich in assets and bankrupt in meaning, and it is equally filled with men who have little coin but live with fire in the heart and stars in the eyes. So let us address the question not with platitudes but with principle, not with cynicism but with clarity. First, we must understand the distinction between comfort and meaning. Money can buy comfort. It can purchase a warm bed, fine clothes, rare delicacies, and front row seats. But comfort is not meaning. Comfort is the absence of pain, while meaning is the presence of purpose. You may remove every inconvenience from a man's life, and still he will feel lost if he does not know why he wakes in the morning. Look at the case of Howard Hughes, one of the wealthiest men in American history. He built an empire in aviation, film, and industry, yet in the end, he died isolated, paranoid, and afraid, holed up in darkened hotel rooms. His money protected his body, but it did not save his mind. He had more than enough wealth to buy the world, but he could not buy peace of soul. The moral: money can build you a fortress, but it cannot fill the throne within. Now contrast that with Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist who survived the concentration camps and wrote Man's Search for Meaning. Stripped of all possessions, starved, beaten, and nearly worked to death, he still found a reason to live. His meaning did not depend on what he had, but on what he believed, what he loved, what he was willing to suffer for. In the depths of poverty and brutality, he found meaning that many billionaires never will. Yet let us not become romantic about poverty, nor blind to the truth that money has a role. It would be folly to suggest that wealth is irrelevant. A starving child cannot ponder life's purpose. A family without shelter cannot meditate on philosophy. Maslow was right. Until basic needs are met, higher needs remain out of reach. Money gives us the platform to rise above survival and look towards significance. It is not meaning, but it can create the space in which meaning grows. So does more money lead to more meaning? The answer depends on the motive of the one who holds it. If a man earns more to feed his vanity, to impress the neighbors, to silence the fear that he is not enough, then no amount will satisfy him. His soul will become a hollow cave, echoing with the laughter of strangers and the weeping of a neglected self. But if a man earns more in order to serve more, to build, to uplift, to educate, to heal, then each dollar becomes a brick in the cathedral of purpose. Let us look to Oprah Winfrey. She built wealth not merely through media, but by listening deeply to the human experience. Her riches came as a result of giving voice to others, of sharing stories that elevated the collective soul. And what did she do with that wealth? She created schools in South Africa, funded scholarships, and built platforms for countless others. Her meaning was not dependent on her wealth, but her wealth enabled her to multiply her meaning. Or consider J.K. Rowling. Once a single mother on welfare, she wrote her stories in cafes, uncertain of whether anyone would care. After the success of Harry Potter, she became a billionaire, only to give away so much that she dropped off the Forbes list. Her money served her meaning, not the reverse. She understood that the true value of her wealth was not in keeping it, but in using it to heal the kind of pain she once knew. The philosophers have not been silent on this matter. Aristotle taught that eudaimonia, the good life, is not pleasure but virtue in action. Meaning comes from living in accordance with one's highest values. Money is a means, not an end. In the Republic, Plato warns that the man who seeks wealth without wisdom becomes a slave to appetite. It is not wealth that leads to meaning, but wisdom in the use of wealth. So what is the practical path? How can we turn our wealth, whether great or small, into a wellspring of meaning? First, define what meaning means to you. Is it family, contribution, creation, faith, discovery? You must name the target before wealth can serve its aim. Second, track your spending not just in terms of dollars, but in alignment. Are you spending in ways that reflect your values or in ways that distract from them? A man's budget is often more revealing than his diary. Third, tied not just to your church or charity, but to your calling. Allocate part of your income to pursue what sets your soul on fire, whether that be painting, writing, mentoring, inventing, or simply learning. Let your money be the soil for your soul's garden. Fourth, measure your life not by net worth, but by net impact. Who is better because you prospered? Who weeps less because you rose? Who now believes in themselves because you dared to pursue your purpose? That is the meaning of wealth. And finally, never believe the lie that you must choose between money and meaning. The greatest lives are those that fuse the two into one sacred pursuit. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire and wrote meditations. Benjamin Franklin built businesses and shaped a nation. Harriet Tubman liberated others and ran enterprises to support her mission. Wealth did not distract them, it empowered them. So does having more money lead to more meaning? No, not by itself. But when money is earned with purpose, managed with wisdom, and spent with love, it becomes a mirror of meaning itself. In such hands, every dollar becomes a declaration. I lived, I served, I mattered. There is a silent poison that drips into the mind of modern man, the idea that what he earns is who he is, that his value is measured by the digits in his bank account, that if his business fails, he has failed, that if he is not rich, he is not worthy. This is a deception more dangerous than poverty itself, for poverty of pocket can be remedied, but poverty of self-worth, when tied to financial success, becomes a prison of the soul. Let us consider history. King Midas in ancient mythology was granted a wish that all he touched turned to gold, and so it did. But soon he discovered that food turned to metal in his mouth, that his daughter became a golden statue in his arms, his blessing became his curse. Why? Because he believed wealth was the ultimate proof of his power, the final measure of his worth, and in that belief, he lost everything that mattered. It is no different today. In the modern world, we place dollar signs beside names and call it achievement. We teach children to pursue careers not by passion, but by salary. We idolize the rich regardless of their character and ignore the wise if they are poor. This is a civilization in spiritual danger, not because money is evil, but because identity has become tangled with possession. Consider Vincent van Gogh. In his lifetime, he sold almost no paintings. He died impoverished and anguished, thinking himself a failure. Yet today, his art is worth hundreds of millions, and his vision has touched generations. Was he worthless then and valuable now? Of course not. His worth was never in the market's opinion. It was in his soul's expression. But because the world tied value to profit, he died in despair. And we must ask, how many others have been broken in the same way? Look too at the stories of men like Ernest Hemingway or Anthony Bourdain, individuals who had fame, fortune, and influence yet ended their lives in darkness. They were celebrated outwardly yet tormented inwardly. Because when your self worth is built on external achievement, it is forever at risk. The moment you falter, your identity shatters. The applause quiets, the bank statement dips, and suddenly you feel you are nothing. But you were never your applause, never your wealth. You were always more. Philosophers through the ages have warned us. Epictetus, the Stoic slave who became a teacher of emperors, said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." He owned nothing, yet he was a king of the inner world. Socrates said that wealth does not bring excellence, but excellence brings wealth. And even then, only the kind of wealth that counts, the kind that cannot be stolen or taxed, the wealth of character. We must therefore establish a new metric. A man is not his income, he is his integrity. He is not his portfolio, he is his principles. He is not his possessions, he is his purpose. When your identity is rooted in something eternal, no market crash can destroy you. But how do we protect ourselves from the seduction of financial identity? First, we must separate outcome from essence. You are not the result of your latest deal. You are not defined by your quarterly report. Your business may collapse, but your character can remain. The athlete who breaks a leg is still a warrior. The entrepreneur who loses a company is still a visionary. Do not confuse the fruit with the tree. Second, practice sacred gratitude for what cannot be bought. Your friendships, your values, your growth, your laughter, your faith. These are the riches that inflation cannot touch. When you ground yourself in these, financial ups and downs become weather, changing, but not defining. Third, develop an internal scoreboard. Ask yourself each night, did I live my values today? Did I grow in kindness, courage, or wisdom? Did I pursue purpose over popularity? These are the questions that forge self-worth, immune to financial failure. Fourth, decouple praise from self-image. Learn to be content in silence. Many who are addicted to financial success are in truth addicted to the validation it brings. But when the world stops clapping, will you still sing your song? The answer must be yes. And fifth, surround yourself with those who see you, not your earnings. If your friends change when your fortune does, they were never friends, they were audience. Build relationships rooted in truth, not transaction. There is a tale in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna tells Arjuna, you have a right to perform your prescribed duties, but you are not entitled to the fruits of your actions. In other words, you must do your work, not for praise, not for reward, not for riches, but because it is your dharma, your soul's responsibility. That is the road to freedom. Even the scriptures remind us, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world but lose his soul? You may earn the world's wealth and still live in inner famine. But if you honor your purpose, wealth becomes not your master, but your servant. Look at Fred Rogers. Mr. Rogers, he never chased fame or fortune. He followed his purpose, to educate and love children through television. His show was modest, his salary modest, but his impact immeasurable. He never confused his paycheck with his power, and so he became a legend not in markets, but in hearts. We must teach our children and remind ourselves that worth is a birthright, not a paycheck, that failure in business is not failure in being, that riches gained at the expense of truth impoverish the soul, and that the man who walks in alignment with his values, whether rich or poor, lives like a king. So yes, there are dangers, grave ones, in tying your self-worth to financial success. But there is also hope for the man who reclaims his identity from his earnings, who rebuilds his worth on deeper ground, becomes invincible. His purpose cannot be repossessed. His dignity cannot be foreclosed. Let your success be a reflection of who you are, not the definition. Let money follow meaning, not the reverse. And in so doing, you will rise above the tides of fortune and walk the earth with a quiet, unshakable power. In the age of accumulation, it is easy to believe that success lies in what you keep. But I tell you now, the truth is otherwise. The secret to a life of both wealth and meaning is not in what you gather into your storehouses, but in what you give from your heart. Generosity is not the side dish, it is the substance. It is not charity, it is character. It is not an act of the wealthy, it is the habit of the wise. From the earliest scriptures to the most modern scientific studies, generosity emerges not merely as a virtue, but as a strategy for abundance. In the Gospel of Luke, we read, "Give, and it shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down and shaken together." In the teachings of Buddha, the path to enlightenment begins with dana, the practice of giving. And even in today's psychology labs, generosity is found to increase happiness, health, and even longevity. Why? Because the soul was not made to hoard, it was made to serve. Let us look at the life of Andrew Carnegie. Born into poverty in Scotland, he rose to become one of the wealthiest men in the world. But what makes Carnegie's name endure is not the steel he forged, it is the libraries he built. Over 2,500 libraries given freely to the public with the belief that knowledge was the great equalizer. He once wrote, "The man who dies rich dies disgraced." He understood that wealth is a river, not a reservoir. It must flow or it stagnates. New generosity plays a unique role in aligning wealth with meaning because it transforms money from a personal possession into a collective instrument. Money, when used selfishly, isolates, but when given purposefully, it connects. The businessman who shares his profits with employees does not just create goodwill, he builds a culture of trust. The artist who shares their platform does not lose fame, they multiply it. Generosity is not subtraction, it is multiplication. Consider the story of Chuck Feeney, the billionaire founder of duty-free shoppers. Quietly, without fanfare, he gave away over $8 billion, 0 cents during his lifetime. Today, he lives in a modest apartment, owning no car and wearing a $10, 0 cents watch. But ask him if he feels rich, and he will tell you richer than ever, because the glow of gold fades, but the memory of lives changed endures. But why does generosity lead to meaning? First, because generosity forces us to look beyond ourselves. It interrupts the ego's endless demand for more. It awakens compassion, that divine instinct that ties us to one another. When you give, you see others not as competitors, but as companions on the journey. You move from I own to I serve. That shift alone can heal a fractured soul. Second, generosity affirms your identity as a creator. You are not merely a consumer of wealth, you are a distributor of light. When you give, you declare that you are not controlled by fear of lack. You live by abundance, and that belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The generous man, even when he gives much, never feels poor. Third, generosity unlocks deeper relationships. Think of the mentors who gave you their time, the friend who lent you money when you were down, the stranger who believed in you when you doubted yourself. Those moments did more than help. They bonded souls. And in a world that grows colder with isolation, generosity warms. Fourth, generosity is a compass. It tells you what matters, where you place your treasure. There your heart is also. So if your treasure flows toward education, you value knowledge. If it flows toward justice, you value equity. If it flows toward art, you value beauty. Your giving reveals your essence. It is a map to your purpose. But how does generosity relate to the pursuit of wealth? Paradoxically, generosity often leads to greater wealth, not just spiritually, but materially. Look at the most enduring companies. Patagonia, which gives 1% of sales to the planet. Salesforce, which pioneered the 1-1-1 philanthropy model. Or Tom Shoes, which built a fortune by giving away shoes. Their generosity became their brand, and their brand became their fortune. Why does this happen? Because generosity builds trust, and trust is the rarest and most valuable currency in business. A generous leader attracts loyalty. A generous brand earns evangelists. A generous investor builds a legacy. Wealth gained through fear and stinginess is fragile, but wealth built through generosity is resilient. There is, of course, a warning. Generosity must be rooted in authenticity. Giving to be seen, to be praised, or to manipulate others is not generosity, it is performance. And the soul knows the difference. True generosity is quiet, consistent, and sacrificial. It gives not what is convenient, but what is meaningful. Leo Tolstoy tells of a rich man who wanted to own all the land he could walk around in a day. He set off at sunrise, running furiously, but as the sun set, he died from exhaustion, and all he could claim in the end was a plot 6 feet long. So it is with the greedy heart. But the generous man leaves a different inheritance, not one of land, but of love. How then can one cultivate a life of meaningful generosity? Begin where you are. You may not have millions, but you have time, you have talents, you have kind words, listening ears, encouragement, and experience. These are treasures too. Set generosity a habit, not a holiday. Set aside a portion of your income, not at the end, but at the beginning. Make giving the cornerstone, not the leftover. Align your giving with your purpose. Do not give out of guilt. Give out of vision. Give to causes that light your soul on fire. Give where you would want to serve if money were no object. Teach it, model it, celebrate it in your home, in your company, in your community. The next generation will not become generous by accident. They must see it lived. And finally, receive with grace. For generosity is not one-sided. Sometimes the most generous thing you can do is allow others to give to you, to accept love, support, kindness, and help. This too is humility, and this too is wealth. So I say to you, generosity is the bridge between money and meaning. It transforms coins into compassion, dollars into destiny. It is not what you give that matters most, but what giving makes of you. Wealth may build the house, but generosity makes it a home. Wealth may light the chandelier, but generosity lights the soul. There is a whispering belief that echoes through every corridor of the modern world, that until you are free from financial worry, you cannot truly live a life of purpose, that passion must wait until profit is secure, that your mission must sleep until your debts are cleared. But I say to you now, this is a lie wrapped in logic, a deception dressed in pragmatism. For while financial freedom is a blessing, it is not a prerequisite for purpose. In fact, the pursuit of purpose is often the very fire that burns away the chains of financial limitation. Let us first understand what we mean by financial freedom. Is it the absence of debt, the possession of wealth, the ability to retire at will? These definitions, while popular, are incomplete. True financial freedom is not a number. It is a state of mind. It is the ability to choose how you spend your time, the courage to say yes to your calling and no to distractions. And for many, this freedom comes not from abundance, but from alignment. History proves that purpose is not the child of wealth. It is often its parent. Consider Mother Teresa. She owned little more than her garments and a rosary, yet she transformed the lives of millions. Was she financially free by the world's standards? Certainly not. But she was internally liberated. Her sense of purpose made her rich in conviction, in clarity, in commitment. She needed no salary to start her mission. She needed only a burning heart. Consider also Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in a prison cell, stripped of liberty, comfort, and wealth. Yet it was in that confinement that his purpose crystallized. He emerged not just a free man, but a force of history. His wealth was his vision, and that vision shaped a nation. Were he to wait for perfect conditions for full freedom before beginning, the world would have waited in vain. Even in the arts and sciences, the pattern holds. Galileo, broke and persecuted, pursued truth when it could cost him his life. Beethoven, deaf and often financially strained, composed masterpieces that echo through the ages. Their purpose was not postponed by poverty. On the contrary, it was sharpened by it. So why do so many today delay their calling in pursuit of comfort? Because they have been sold a story that says, when I have enough, I will begin. But enough is a moving target. The man who says he needs $100,000, 0 cents to feel secure, soon needs $200,000, 0 cents. The woman who dreams of writing her novel when she retires finds that her fire has faded when she finally has the time. Delaying purpose for money often leads to a life where neither is fully lived. This is not to glorify struggle, nor to dismiss the burdens of real financial need. Poverty can crush the spirit. Hunger can distort dreams. But even in these trials, purpose can grow. In fact, it must, because purpose is the one force that can transform suffering into strength, scarcity into strategy. Let us be practical. What can a person do when they have purpose but lack financial freedom? First, they must start where they are, with what they have. The teacher who dreams of changing education doesn't need $1 million to mentor one student. The entrepreneur who longs to solve a social problem can begin with a single customer. The artist with a vision need not wait for a grant to paint their first stroke. Purpose is not a luxury. It is scalable. Begin small. Begin scrappy. Begin now. Second, they must shift from a consumer mindset to a creator mindset. Too many see their lack of money as a prison, but it can also be a forge. Constraint breeds creativity. When you have little, you learn to innovate, to barter, to build from scraps. The great companies, movements, and revolutions often began not with capital, but with commitment. Third, they must manage money with purpose, not just pursue it. Every dollar becomes a soldier in service of the mission. Cut distractions, eliminate status purchases, delay indulgence, build the war chest not for ego, but for impact. Fourth, they must seek alignment. Do not divide your life into money-making and meaning-making compartments. Find work, even if modest, that touches your values. The janitor who believes his cleaning makes the hospital safer is richer in purpose than the executive who hates his job. Meaning is not found in status, it is found in significance. And fifth, understand that purpose itself can become the path to financial freedom. The writer who writes truthfully may one day sell books. The coach who serves sincerely may one day build a business, but only if they begin without waiting for perfection. Passion pursued with discipline often pays. Look at Oprah Winfrey. Born into poverty, she did not wait until she was rich to start speaking truth. She began in pain, in rejection, in lack, but she began. Her purpose created her platform. Her message built her wealth. But the fire came first. Look at Viktor Frankl, who in a concentration camp lost everything but his purpose. He wrote that those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. He had no financial freedom. He had no control, yet his soul remained free. And from that freedom, he wrote Man's Search for Meaning, a book that has helped millions find their purpose. So no, financial freedom is not required to live a purpose-driven life, but purpose is required to pursue true financial freedom. Because without purpose, money becomes a master. With purpose, money becomes a tool. Without purpose, wealth leads to anxiety. With purpose, even modest means lead to fulfillment. You do not need to be rich to start your mission, but you must be rich in resolve. You do not need a fortune to be significant. You need a reason, a vision, a cause. Start where you are, give what you can, build while you walk, and let your purpose be the compass, not your comfort. There comes a time in every soul's journey when it must answer a question, not of wealth, but of worth, not what can I earn, but what must I become? For the pursuit of financial success, if not anchored in integrity, becomes a hollow ascent. A man may climb to the top of the ladder only to find it was leaning against the wrong wall. He may acquire every treasure but lose the compass of his soul. And so I say to you now, the cornerstone of true success is not cleverness but character, not strategy alone but sincerity. For what does it profit a man to gain the world if he forfeits his essence? Integrity is the invisible line that separates fortune from folly. It is the unseen force that gives wealth its legitimacy, ambition its morality, and achievement its immortality. It is not an accessory to success. It is its foundation. And just as steel strengthens a skyscraper, integrity strengthens a life built on aspiration. Without it, the tallest towers fall. Consider the life of George Washington. At Valley Forge, his soldiers starved, his cause hung by a thread. He could have bartered with corruption, played politics for power, but he held fast to honor. And from that furnace of suffering, a nation was born, not by cunning, but by conscience. His wealth came not from war, but from the legacy of leadership built on unshakable principles. Or take Abraham Lincoln, who faced a fractured country and relentless critics. He was offered shortcuts, surrounded by advisors who urged compromise of principle, but he held the course. Let us have faith that right makes might, he said, and in that faith let us to the end dare to do our duty. His success was not in silver, but in soul. His integrity outlived his office. Now you ask, what practices can help one maintain such integrity on the climb toward financial success? First, define your values before you define your goals. Too many chase numbers before naming principles. But if you do not know your non-negotiables, the world will negotiate them for you. Write them down, engrave them in your heart. Let them be your true north. Wealth earned at the expense of values is counterfeit, but wealth earned in alignment with values becomes a blessing. Second, adopt radical honesty with others and with yourself. Lies, even small ones, corrode the soul. They promise ease but deliver erosion. The businessman who inflates numbers, the artist who plagiarizes ideas, the leader who hides the truth, they all walk the road to ruin. But the man who speaks truth, even when it costs him, builds a fortress no scandal can destroy. Third, create accountability. Do not travel alone. Surround yourself with those who will challenge your ego, question your decisions, and hold you to the higher standard. In the life of Benjamin Franklin, we find an example. He formed a club called the Junto, a society of thinkers and tradesmen who gathered weekly to discuss philosophy, business, and ethics. Through dialogue and critique, he sharpened both mind and character. So must you. Fourth, separate your identity from your income. You are not your bank balance. You are not your net worth. The man who roots his self-esteem in money becomes vulnerable to pride in times of plenty and panic in times of loss. But the one who finds worth in his virtues stands firm no matter the market. Identity anchored in integrity remains unshaken. Fifth, treat every transaction as sacred. Business is not a battlefield, it is a bridge. Every deal, every sale, every agreement is an opportunity to express who you are. Do not cut corners. Do not deceive. Build your name like a temple, slowly, carefully, reverently. Warren Buffett once said it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. But he also proved that success built on trust can weather any storm. Sixth, practice generosity. It tempers the hunger for more and nurtures the heart. The generous person remembers that money is a means, not the master. By giving, you free yourself from greed. By sharing, you multiply joy. The most respected fortunes in history, Carnegie, Rockefeller, Gates, are remembered not only for their gains, but for their gifts. Seventh, cultivate humility. Success can intoxicate. It whispers that you are invincible, indispensable, infallible. But humility is the antidote. It reminds you that every success is built on the backs of many, that luck often plays a role, and that your purpose is bigger than your profit. Humility does not mean thinking less of yourself. It means thinking of yourself less often. 8, read the great books. Let literature be your mentor. In Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov, we learn that every man is responsible for all mankind. In Emerson's essays, we find the call to self-reliance guided by conscience. In Les Miserables, Jean Valjean's transformation teaches us that mercy and justice must walk hand in hand. Feed your soul as you feed your wallet. Ninth, make decisions as if the whole world were watching, because one day they will. Integrity is tested not in public, but in private. When no one is looking, when no one will know, when you could get away with it, that is when character is forged. Remember the words of Seneca, a good character, when established, is not easily overthrown. And finally, live with the end in mind. Picture your obituary. What will be said of you? That you were rich or that you were righteous? That you left money or that you left meaning? At the end of your days, it is not the size of your estate that will comfort you, but the depth of your impact. It is not what you bought, but who you became. The road to financial success is full of opportunities to compromise, but every time you choose principle over profit, honesty over expedience, giving over grasping, you rise. Not just in wealth, but in wisdom. You become more than successful, you become significant. Let the world pursue riches without restraint, but let us pursue wealth with honor. Let us build empires not of marble, but of moral strength. Let us count our worth not in what we possess, but in the values we preserve. For in the end, it is not the wealth we accumulate, but the integrity with which we lived that becomes our true legacy.